Hey there, it's that time of year, time for our regular At Issue holiday panels. But a heads up, we had this conversation before MP Michael Ma crossed the floor to the Liberals. There's still lots of smart thoughts here, and the panel will no doubt have a lot to say about Quebec, floor crossings, and leadership reviews when we're back in a few weeks. Thank you, as usual, for watching At Issue throughout the whole year. At Issue, what's coming for the year ahead? We're looking forward to see what we might see in 2026 from leadership contests.
My plan is to continue to lead, to be the only leader in the country that's fighting for an affordable Canada.
To questions about national sovereignty.
I am not certain that oil and gas qualify to define a culture.
To the threat of more tariff uncertainty.
A lot of it does come in from Canada, and so we'll end up putting very severe tariffs on that if we have to.
So what will be the biggest stories going into the next year? What will be the challenges facing the government? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it all down in person again. Chantal Hebert, Coyne and Althia Raj. I should say that none of you like me asking what's going to happen in 2026. So that's the caveat on the entire panel. This one's not terrible, though. This one's not terrible. A political leader or MP or politician to watch in 2026. Andrew, you have 17 answers. So would you like to choose one of them?
Whoever becomes the NDP leader.
Oh, really?
The NDP is in an absolute crossroads here. So is Canadian politics. We've had 3 or 4 or 5 party politics since 1921, leaving aside the bloc, but in the configuration of parties that are actually vying for power in the country. If they cannot come back, then we're into a very different type of politics. That's important not just for the NDP, but for the other parties. The Liberal strategy in every election is to try to tell NDPers you can't vote for the NDP, you have to vote for us to keep the Conservatives out. The Conservatives need the NDP to do well, to split the vote.
Right.
So it will absolutely shape not just the future of the NDP, but Canadian politics.
So it's less about who wins and more about the impact.
Well, but who wins and what they represent is critical. Do they still pitch to downtown progressives at the expense of the blue-collar vote, which increasingly is strained to the Conservatives? Do they try to go back towards the union vote? Do they try to find a leader who could straddle the two? That's a critical choice.
Yes,
person to watch.
Do they have someone in the lineup that fits all those definitions?
Yeah, I don't know.
Quebec leaders.
At large, yeah.
At large, there's an election coming. The Liberal leader is been struggling as we tape this.
Yes.
François Legault, the Quebec Premier, is deeply unpopular. And the Parti québécois leader, who is leading in the polls, like an election tomorrow based on polls, would see a sweep of Francophone Quebec.
He stepped in it, though, a few times. Yeah.
But he's untested.
Yes.
And has many features that have reminded, at year's end, have reminded Quebecers of another leader that has become unloved in Quebec called Pierre Poilievre. And that style is what has done harm to the Conservatives in Quebec. Yep. And that same style could really hurt the PQ. So it's going to be interesting to see how the dynamics, what the final lineup looks like, which I believe we don't know yet. And then how this PQ leader who wants to have a referendum and win it, presumably, is going to handle the pressure of an election campaign. Is about as pleasant in a news conference or in a scrum as Pierre Poilievre.
Huh. Althia, political leader to watch.
The Prime Minister. I think that we didn't really know who Mark Carney was, and 2025 helped put a little bit of color around the lines. And I think 2026 will give us a far better indication of who he is and where he wants to go and what his focus is, especially in light of a possible new NDP leader. Does that force a correction, a realignment among the Liberal Prime Minister? So, yeah.
And can he deliver on all the things he's talking about, right? Because that's part of what we
can talk about that too, but he seems to be having a hard time delivering on
legislation. Yeah. Biggest political challenge for next year, Chantal? Thus far, right? Everything is with a caveat.
I guess snatching Kuzma intact from the jaws of the ever-truing jaws of the Trump administration is going to be a challenge. It's like watching a yo-yo, right? One day we should have separate negotiations with Canada and Mexico. Other days we shouldn't have that deal at all. It's kind of a dog's breakfast. It's going to be really hard to know if you're actually talking to adults when you talk about the issue. And then there's the U.S. dynamics. It's unpredictable, but we talked on other shows about how, you know, all the normal bars are being taken down, but people still vote. And so far they have been voting in a way that says we don't agree with what's happening.
Yeah, and midterms could change that. Your answer is along those lines too.
Yep, I think the biggest challenge will be addressing the relationship with the United States, whether that's maintaining CUSMA, which I don't know if we will be able to maintain, but maybe we'll have a year-to-year lease on life. But also, like, addressing the Trump relationship, as we saw with the national security strategy, for example.
Yeah.
How can Mark Carney and the Liberals kind of reconcile those two things and the elbows up 2015 campaign promises? I think that's going to be a real challenge.
Andrew.
I have several answers, but they all boil down to one, which is we're in the age of the poly crisis. You name it. Whether you're talking about the national security threat, not necessarily annexing Canada, but certainly attempting to turn us into a vassal state. You look at the foreign interference activities of China and Russia. We may be having a separatist government elected in Quebec, but we may also have a separatist referendum in Alberta. So the first time we'd be fighting that on two fronts. You've got the United States falling into a recession potentially. What can that mean for Canada? Here's what I'm really worried is to put all those together. We have, you know, such stresses and strains with the economy now, where we have very different economic bases in different parts of the country. That's pulling and pushing on us. You've got foreign agents and foreign powers that want to exacerbate those divisions. Do we see, like, if you saw a separatist movement now in Canada, in whatever province, what do you think the response of Donald Trump would be? Would it be what every previous president had been? I've either it's not my affair, or we would prefer United Canada, or would he be egging them on and encouraging them?
I'm guessing in the case of Alberta or Saskatchewan, he would be encouraging.
Yeah, but Quebec might be
I don't think he wants the Quebec thing.
No,
okay,
but
it's reciprocal.
Not to annex them, but to cause trouble for Canada.
Yeah, it's harder to do in Quebec because of the language thing.
Okay, very quickly, like 90 seconds, will we get a trade deal with the U.S.?
Do we want one?
Okay, you can answer that one too.
I think I still believe that time is our friend.
Yeah.
And I'm watching what's happening, you know, to the president's popularity and the various votes, and what business is telling the president and what the economy is doing. And maybe so, but I think the difference between now and this time last year is we're not so desperate to get a quick deal.
Yeah, we're not, but as the Prime Minister continues to point out, we still have a better deal than most people.
That's right.
Yeah.
The United States is potentially descending into some kind of chaos in the next year. Donald Trump is down in the 30% poll, but he shows no sign of worry about it, which means how likely is it that they're going to have a free and fair election in the midterms? I think it's 50-50 at best. So, yeah, I think that I've said this many times, the best play is to rag the puck, drag things out as long as you can. Yes, we want a deal, but we also don't want to be blackmailed. And part of Donald Trump's agenda, as weird and crazy as it is to bring us to our knees. And one way of doing that is dangling the free trade deal and saying, do this, that, and the other thing, otherwise no trade deal. We cannot be put in a position of yielding to blackmail on that.
30 seconds.
I think the government already knows that, right? Otherwise, they would have agreed to sort of the things that were floated earlier in June and later in August. Will we get a trade deal? I agree. I'm not sure that we want a trade deal, or we don't want the trade deal that's on the table.
Sure.
And maybe it is better to keep the status quo, whether that's the Americans just saying, okay, well, we're going back on this 1 year review, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, because we don't know what's going to happen. I can't see them totally pulling out of CUSMA right before the midterms. I think that would be kind of suicidal for them.
At issue, the year ahead, with an election in the rear view and ongoing economic uncertainty, what are the tension points for Canada heading into 2026? Can Mark Carney guide the Liberals through this minority parliament?
The Liberals can't count on me voting confidence in the government again.
To questions about Canada's energy ambitions and the return of separatist sentiment.
This is a test of whether Canada works as a country.
Trying to appease separatist movement in part of the country by fueling them in another part of the country.
Welcome back. From pipelines to separatism, party leaders to floor crossings, lots of topics on the horizon for 2026. Lots still to talk about with that issue. Chantal, Andrew, Althia. Althia, I'm going to start with you. Again, these questions are really mean, but I'm asking them anyway, because that's why you're all here. How long do you think the government will survive?
Well, I don't know.
Yes, obviously.
Correct answer.
Start there.
I think surviving a confidence vote in the spring is going to be a challenge. How many Conservatives can fit behind the curtain?
Allegedly.
We saw them. I don't see how Elizabeth May votes confidence in the government. I don't see how New Democrats, unless they have no hope of running for their own seat and are looking for things for their own ridings, would vote or abstain along with the government. I don't see the Bloc Québécois voting with the government, so you're relying on the Conservatives. The Liberals would like to have an election in the spring, but they don't want to be seen as triggering the election. And
is there necessarily a confidence vote, though, in the
there
spring?
will be.
Okay.
First of all, all of the budgetary measures that were introduced in the spring have not passed, so there will be a string of confidence measures early in the new year, and then there's supposed to be
Implementation Act and stuff,
Yeah, and there's supposed to be a fiscal update, which would be a nice time to have a spring-summer election as opposed to a Christmas time election. But there are a few challenges. This MOU with Alberta, the negotiations are supposed to end on April 1st. Already the environment minister is changing the benchmark. She's talking about equivalency requirements and things like that. So there's potential for more tension coming, and you could see why if the government thinks it would lose or have to suffer some sort of defeat on CUSMA, that they would rather go earlier than later.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of incentives for them to go in the spring. The other potential question mark is if Pierre Poilievre wins the Conservative leadership with large numbers, do some members in his caucus that Andrew was talking about who are very uncomfortable with him, do they decide to cross the floor?
What do you think? What is it, like, how long? I mean, we all know approximately how long they last, right? They last about 18 months kind of thing?
18 to 24 months. And the next fall is, at least the first half of the fall is out of the play of an election because of the Quebec election. So that doesn't mean you can't have a federal election back-to-back. It happened before. And there will be a budget in the fall. So there is a window in the fall. But I agree with Althea that every confidence vote looks harder to win and more dependent on the Conservatives. I think the MOU with Alberta has given the NDP more reasons not to abstain on confidence votes, that they hope that they can edge their way back to official party status with a new leader with BC votes. And they also believe that the Liberals or the Conservatives would not have enough support to form a majority government because in Quebec, Mark Carney and the Liberals will take a hit.
But wouldn't that MOU make it maybe difficult for the Conservatives to vote against the government if they feel like they're getting closer to an actual project?
But Pierre Poilievre already took a hit for not for ensuring that an election did not happen. There's a limit to that, and there is also a limit to how much, at some point you start looking so weak as the opposition leader, and you're already a drag on the party. I'm assuming he's reconducted, obviously, as leader. Otherwise, I don't think we would have an election because the Conservatives would pick a new leader. Very bad news, I think, for Mr. Carney. And the NDP, once it has a leader, will not be trading favors easily with the Liberals, I think.
I think the question is whether the Liberals want to survive. It's going to depend on a few things, but Mark Carney had a very relatively easy year because the Conservatives were demoralized, their leader lost his own seat, and he had this leadership review hanging over his head. The NDP are absolutely flat in their back, so they're not going to be much of a threat. So he had this total freedom of movement, basically, to move the party well over to the right. That's going to get much tighter squeeze in the election. Let's assume Pierre Poilievre has a successful leadership review, reintroduces himself to the public. Let's assume the NDP makes a sensible choice for their leadership, positions themselves, as straddling that divide that we talked about earlier, but certainly, get some renewed energy. then does he wait and let both of those things continue, lets the NDP grow stronger, lets the Conservatives grow stronger? Does he wait, particularly given all these storm clouds that are gathering over the country, economically, separatist threats, Donald Trump, et cetera, or is it more in his interest to go then? Now, calling an election, we have a fixed date election law in this country, which everybody ignores.
That's funny.
But he could, but it is certainly, even if he doesn't want to do that, is not beyond the ingenuity of governments to contrive their own defeat. And if I were a betting man, I'd say in the spring.
But there are more in history, recent history, more governments that tried to transform minority to majority and failed than the alternative. Yeah, Jean Charest succeeded. Bill Davis got the same result. Yeah. Justin Trudeau, let's not talk about that attempt. Pauline Marois, you look at, and often they started the campaign on a lead.
Yeah. I think the question is less, is this a positive opportunity for him? Is this the least bad? Is this the way to stave off a worse outcome?
Right. They don't want to be punished by the voters for going now because polls suggest that people don't want an election. I do think that a lot will depend on Pierre Poilievre, because there is a large part of the Conservative base that is like, well, you keep telling us the Liberals are terrible and they're corrupt and they're this and they're that. Well, then why are you negating all these opportunities to have an election and replace them? And if Mr. Poilievre feels that Mr. Carney has a weakness in Quebec because of what has just happened, and feels like the NDP could pop up in urban centers and split the vote there, on Vancouver Island, for example, then Mr. Poilievre might decide, okay, well, the cards are there for me. I mean, he's not a stupid person. He knows that if he goes and he fails again, he's probably gone. Yeah. But, looking at the polls, they're pretty much neck and neck. So
except when it comes to preferred PM,
except when it comes to preferred. But those people, I'm sorry, but I really think the vast majority of people who really dislike Pierre Poilievre probably voted for Mark Carney in the last election anyways.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not sure how much growth there is on that side.
Thank you all for doing all that work through the very busy year. I always say it's my favorite day of the week, and none of you believe me, but it is. It's because I just get to listen to you guys and learn things, so thank you all for that. That's At Issue for this week. I'm Rosemary Barton. Thank you for watching.